This week has seen the United Nations Food Agency launch a new Zimbabwe appeal as millions face a food crisis, and Ghana arrests masterminds of a foiled coup plot. This is Africa Focus.
Egyptian Mesua plays with fire to ease muscle pain. Nigerian migrants struggle to reintegrate after Libya ordeal. And South African NGO calls for training of police on violence against women.
I'm Lenny Rashid, and our sign language interpreter is Teresia Washira. Before we get into the main stories, let's take a look at the news that made the headlines around the continent.
Families who lost relatives in fatal Boeing 737 MAX air crashes are said to receive about $144,500 each from the company. The money comes from a $50 million financial assistance fund, which Boeing announced in July. The fund has started accepting claims which must be submitted before 2020. Lawyers for the victims' families, many of whom are pursuing the company in court, have dismissed the fund as a publicity stunt. The 737 MAX has been grounded since March as investigators evaluate the airplane's safety following fatal crashes in Indonesia and Ethiopia, which claimed the lives of more than 340 people. Boeing in July pledged $100 million to families and communities affected by the crashes. The company said half would be reserved for direct payments to families, with the other half set aside for education and development programs in affected communities. 8 babies were killed when a fire ripped through a maternity hospital in eastern Algeria before dawn. Prime Minister Nadine Boudou ordered an inquiry and sent Health Minister Mohamed Birou to the scene of the fire. It was the second blaze to hit the maternity hospital in Oud Souf in 18 months. A fire in May last year caused significant damage but no casualties. It was the first of its kind in Liberia since the end of the civil crisis. Pregnant women and mothers with babies took to the streets to express their dissatisfaction. Medical doctors and health workers at the Duport Road Health Center were not attending to their critical conditions. The health workers in Painesville City and elsewhere in the country were tired of complaining about the government's failure to pay their salaries, and they had stopped working. Traffic was blocked for several hours as a result of a protest action.
Interim President Abdelkader Ben Salah announced on the 12th of December as the date for the presidential election, 5 months into a political vacuum since longtime leader Abdel Aziz Bouteflika resigned in the face of mass protests. With the country facing a constitutional crisis, Algerians protested the move.
Abdelkader Ben Salah, who is precluded from studying himself, made an announcement in a televised address to the nation. The announcement comes after Army Chief General Ahmed Gaid Salah, seen as Algeria's strongman since the fall of the alien Bouteflika, insisted the polls be held by the end of 2019, despite ongoing protests demanding the creation of new institutions ahead of any elections.
They are a mafia, and I will not vote for them and not pay any attention to them. In my opinion, they are not present on the ground and not in my interest. That of the state himself, the parliament, the government and the system are all illegal. Therefore, they are not serious and I do not support them. The activists, the participants in the popular movement and the ones who are refusing these elections are the ones who are right.
Algerian protesters returned to the road after Parliament passed bills paving the way for the announcement of elections. Justice Minister Belkacem Zigmati presented the bills, with both legislative chambers passing them within 2 days. Opposition parties in the People's National Assembly boycotted the session in which the bills were passed. The first bill proposed the creation of an independent election authority, while the second text was the revision of Algeria's electoral law.
If God is willing, the election will not be held on time. They have pushed us to hate and have lack of faith in everything. If there is someone who is harming us, how can we vote for him? We have become crazy because of all the things and oppression they have done.
Presidential polls originally planned for July 4th were postponed due to the lack of viable candidates, plunging the country into a constitutional crisis as the 90-day mandate of Ben Salah expired in early July.
I know that on 12th December, the Algerian people will go and place their votes in the ballot boxes. Do not be scared of anything and choose the right man from among the 20 or 30 people legally nominated.
The army's high command had rejected any solution to the crisis other than presidential elections in the shortest time possible.
Since 2017, more than 14,000 young Nigerians have returned from Libya under a United Nations voluntary repatriation program. Many spent months, even years, stranded in Libya, sold as slaves by their smugglers. But once back home in Nigeria, life is even more difficult than before. Saddled with debt, struggling to find work, and broken by their treatment at the hands of the traffickers.
Gloria once dreamed of an international career in fashion, but since her return from Libya to Benin City in Nigeria, she has been working as a seamstress on an assembly line in a tracksuit workshop, earning just $40 a month. Like many Nigerians who try to escape poverty, Gloria's journey to Europe was cut short in Libya.
My dad just had the belief that if I travel out, I'll be able to help the family. So when I came back, it's only him I told that look at what I went through. After they asked me, I tell them, it's normal.
Like Gloria, 14,000 young Nigerians stuck in Libya have returned home since 2017, thanks to a United Nations programme. The state of Edo provides them with about €100 to get back on their feet. The state has also created training programmes to encourage reintegration.
It's a priority for us to give returnees and young people that could be potentially migrating jobs and opportunities that they are interested in. Things that they would like to do, and not just things they would like to do. We don't want them just engaged. We want them to be able to see potential for growth.
In Nigeria, more than half of under 35s are unemployed. TK tried to reach Europe in 2017. Despite training to become a butcher, he has been unemployed since his return. Today, he lives in this tiny two-room apartment that he shares with his wife and daughter.
When I was in Libya, I normally say to myself, I must survive. It wasn't easy. I passed through a lot. If I can stay in a desert for 4 days without eating, I can stay in my country for 1 month without even eating. It's more better for me.
More than 60,000 Nigerians are still stranded in Libya. The vast majority are still in detention centres or in the hands of traffickers and local militias.
The South African Parliament is debating measures on violence against women. Recently, a victim described how the continuous abuse by her husband and lack of response from authorities drove her close to suicide. Activists are now calling for better training of police officers on handling such cases.
With placards stating "Enough is enough," hundreds of protesters marched in Johannesburg to protest at gender-based violence in one of the world's most crime-ridden countries. Demonstrations in South Africa have been mounting over the rising toll of murders, rapes, and abuse of women and girls, and a sense of impunity and government failure that surrounds it.
I think the first point of call for government is to start looking at how the South African police services are responding to the reporting of violent crimes against women. Are the police officers trained to be sensitive?
President Cyril Ramaphosa vowed to review laws and crack down on perpetrators last week after hundreds of women assembled on the sidelines of an economic summit in Cape Town to draw attention to the issue.
The time comes in the life of a nation where there remains two choices: to submit or to fight. We are not a nation that submits. We have come too far to surrender to intolerance, to misogyny, and to violence. That we have come together here today, united by our determination to overcome this problem, shows the strength of our resolve.
But frustrated by the pace of change, some 500 demonstrators, mainly women, gathered again in Johannesburg to demand action, not words. They chanted as police watched on the sidelines. Blood-stained sheets and clothing were laid out in front of Johannesburg Stock Exchange in Sandton, one of the city's most affluent areas, to call for more support from businesses and banks.
The Department of Social Development funds us 40% of what we need a year to keep the doors open. That means I sit with a deficit of 6 million rand a year. So increased funding would mean we would uniformly extend our services to survivors.
South Africans have recently been shocked by the separate murders of 3 young women. A 19-year-old university student and a 14-year-old schoolgirl were killed in Cape Town earlier this month. The former raped and beaten to death on her way to a post office. Boxing champion legendary Baby Lee Jiggles was allegedly shot dead by her partner, who was a police officer last month. Their stories triggered outcry and soul-searching in a country that often appears numb to murder and sexual violence.
I went so many times to the police station for help. They would bring me back themselves with the police van and saying that we don't interfere with house business because there's house issues and you guys need to sort it yourself. Knowing that when the police van is going to drop me there, he is standing there. So I know I'm going to get it now when I go in. I personally feel what really needs to be done is that we need more safe houses. We need more safe houses, which means there need to be a bigger budget to accommodate more safe houses, and there need to be more awareness out there so that people can know what their rights is and what they can do.
Police crime figures released showed that sexual offences, including rape, rose 4.6% over a year. More than 40,000 incidents of rape were reported to the police between April 2018 and March 2019, a figure likely to be far short of the true numbers.
Coming up after the break.
Environmental groups call for action on climate change in Nairobi.
Africa Focus takes a breather. Don't touch that dial. Keep it switched. Welcome back to Africa Focus. South African coach Rassie Erasmus said New Zealand remain the favourites for the Rugby World Cup, but warned they'll face tougher challenges than his SpringBoks side later in the competition. New Zealand claimed a 23-13 opening Pool B victory over the SpringBoks in Yokohama in a game in which they had less than the ball, but capitalised on errors by the SpringBoks to score 2 tries to 1.
And off we go, and out they come.
Defending world champions New Zealand and South Africa locked horns on Saturday in the most highly anticipated match of the opening weekend at the 2019 Rugby World Cup in Japan. The teams went into the match with an even record at World Cups, both sides having won twice each across their 4 previous meetings at the global showpiece. The last time the teams met in a World Cup, the All Blacks ran out 20-18 winners on their way to lifting the Webb Ellis Trophy for a record 3rd time.
The player of the match got us underway.
Ahead of the encounter, a Springbok coach Rassie Erasmus had named unchanged side for the first time since that semi-final at Twickenham. South Africa started the game on the front foot and took the lead inside 5 minutes, thanks to a penalty from Andre Pollard. The Springboks dominated possession early on, but the All Blacks defense held firm. The defending world champions began to turn the defense into attack and were awarded a penalty in the 23rd minute, right in front of the uprights. Richie Mo'unga converted to level the scores. The All Blacks were gathering momentum and will eventually reap the benefits with George Bridge finishing off a well-worked move following a cross kick from deep inside his own half by Mo'unga. New Zealand will later cross the whitewash for the 2nd time moments later as Anton Lienert-Brown did well to break the defensive line and offloaded to Scott Barrett, who had an easy run in. South Africa made a confident start to the second half and were rewarded inside the opening 5 minutes, again as Peter Steph du Toit picked up the ball from the rack and ran through an oppost to dot down under the poles. Pollard converted to move South Africa to within 7 points. Cheslin Colby looked the most threatening for the Springboks in the closing stages, making some good line breaks, but South Africa weren't able to make the most of the chances. Meanwhile, New Zealand held on for a 23-13 win on the opening match of the tournament.
Yeah, well, I guess that's a challenge we'll have to now take head on. You know, our history is there to to break, and unfortunately we've put ourselves into a position now, and now we have to fight. But I think we can't moan about this performance. They really played well. I think the referee was good, and we just have to work really hard.
I think we didn't start well today. They started very well. They handled our kicking game very well, and I think a little bit of the physicality as well in the first half. I think we took too long to get into the game.
The team in green and gold are next in action against Namibia on Saturday and then meet Canada in the final game in their pool on October 9th, with head coach Rassie Erasmus vowing to scrap all the way to World Cup final.
Climate change protesters gathered in Uhuru Park in Nairobi to call on the government and the private sector to take action on the issue. Kenya joined other nations globally to rekindle critical discussions surrounding Mother Nature's burden.
The Ministry of Environment office. They joined demonstrators in cities around the world for the global climate strike.
Niko hapa kwa sababu ya kupenda miti, kupenda wanyama, kupenda kila kitu.
Swedish teenager Greta Thunberg inspired the worldwide movement which started in Australia on Friday, September 20th, where over 300,000 people took part. Kenyan protesters were calling for programs around clean energy and safe water to be installed in the country.
Climate change is real and it's coming for us, and it doesn't matter who you are. Whether you are rich or poor, this thing is real and it doesn't isolate.
Africa is believed to be the continent global warming will affect the most, and governments have asked for more help from the international community.
Whether it's a cyclone in Mozambique or whether it's a drought in the north of Kenya, this is no longer something happening in the future, it's something happening now. So we realise we have a role to work with young people, but also to put in big programs around clean energy and safe water. But governments and the private sector need to lead.
The strike took place ahead of the UN General Assembly and the Climate Action Summit on Monday, September 23rd. The summit will bring together governments, the private sector, civil society, local authorities, and other international organizations to develop ambitious solutions.
Dambe, a striking form of martial arts in Nigeria, which has now grown from the country's traditional boxing culture into an entertaining spectacle, has seen players make up to $900 during major tournaments. Even as Nigeria hopes to export the traditional boxing culture, the founders of Dambe Warriors in the country are planning to create an arena that will draw in tourists.
Wrapping his fist with a kara, special strips of fabric used to protect the fist, Aljanin Yahaya is getting ready for a Dambe fight at a neighborhood square in Lagos, Nigeria. In the past, fighters used to dip the kara in resin and crushed glass to better injuries on their opponent. Tactics like that, however, are now illegal. Dambe is a striking martial art said to have been around for over 200 years that has grown from its brutal origins to a more entertaining spectacle today. Fighters often use one hand to fight while using the other as a shield. Sometimes legs are also used against the opponent, the strategy being going straight for the kill in the shortest time possible by knocking out your opponent or forcing them to surrender.
I am very happy with my life because I get food to eat when I engage in this sport. I get money for relaxation when I don't take part in any other sports apart from traditional Dambe boxing.
The sport has 3 houses or fighting groups, Jamus, Arewa, and Guruwada. Many of the fighters have been doing this from an early age, others even depending on it as a source of living. Even as the players make between $400 to $900 during major tournaments that are recorded and posted online to subscribers. In the past, fighters competed for wives, parcels, land, and other prized items.
Even before I became a Dambe fighter, I have always loved to fight. I used to fight with everyone, and they always complained to my parents. Then one day I saw a group of people fighting Dambe, and I knew I could do it.
I don't go how did they do?
In 2017, Anthony Okeleke and Chidi Anyina started Dambe Warriors, a production company that plans to market the sport further by giving viewers packaged video recordings of matches. The founders, who initially paid fighters from their own pockets, have now expanded to organize tournaments and collect gate fees from spectators.
The overall goal for us as a company is basically to elevate this sport from these rustic grounds into an internationally recognized sport, you understand? Put it out there on the likes of the UFC and the MMA, you know, for Europe and USA, similar to what they have in Asia, the One Championship. So for us, it's about building this Rugby Warriors franchise as a sporting asset in Africa. It's like the biggest combat sports in Africa.
In 2 years, the company has signed up about 100,000 subscribers and has garnered over 24 million views, including viewers from Indonesia, Brazil, Thailand, Philippines, and the United States. After filling a match, the team heads back to the studio to edit and voice recordings before posting them on the internet.
So after the tedious task of getting the right color grading, the right audio, the right visuals, and length or duration of the video, next up, Rugby Warriors bout for the day is ready for upload.
The company's founders are working on plans to start a private arena that will draw tourists to watch games. They are also in talks to partner with major satellite stations as they look to expand their viewership.
The ancient Egyptians were the first to codify and study essential oils and their therapeutic benefits. In modern-day Cairo, Egyptian masseurs play with fire to relieve the client's muscle pain and keep the art of reflexology alive.
Abdel Rahim Said applies the ancient pharaonic technique known as the fiery towel by starting with a standard massage using oil and chamomile to stimulate blood circulation and alleviate some of the pain in affected areas.
It is a type of massage which is called fairy massage. It means rubbing. I communicate with the human body, coming to close contact with the body of the human in front of me.
Then comes the heat. Said places several layers of towels and other isolating materials on the client's back. Then a towel soaked in alcohol is placed on top and set on fire. It burns for roughly a minute before the flames are put out with a wet towel. It works by sucking moisture out of the body. He cannot use the technique with people suffering from high blood pressure, kidney failure or hemophilia.
My condition improved 100%, thank God. Before I could not stand up to pray, I couldn't stretch my back when I get out of the car. Now, after the second session, my body is getting better and my movement is better. I used to be lazy, but this is no longer the case.
Said's clients have experienced differences in mobility as a result of the fiery massages.
There are some prohibitions that we always warn about. We check the client's medical and health condition. If the client's condition allows us to apply the method, we do it. If we find out that their health condition does not allow us to use this method after studying their case, we don't carry out this method.
He said he trained under an expert in the fiery towel technique in Morocco and had earned several massage certifications from institutions in Egypt.
On Africa Focus, we love hearing from you, so make sure you get interactive with us on our various social media pages. Remember, you can view this program along with our wide array of other programs on DSTV channel 268 and on Azam TV channel 138. On behalf of the entire team here on Africa Focus, thank you for keeping us company on this exciting journey. Do enjoy the rest of your viewing. Keep it